Oops. All right. So, if you are watching the replay, we are here every week, Sunday at 11:30 in the morning, in the afternoon, California time. So, be sure to catch us next time. So, we're going to go ahead and try to jump right into this until we get some people going. Bring up some recent comments. Lots going on. Trying to up my editing skills to bring you guys better value, make the videos more interesting, more engaging. Recently talked about vowel length, how vowel length is based mostly on stress, which is a controversial topic, apparently. But I'm here to teach you guys. Dang, wow, 12 dislikes. Interesting. That's massive. But 28 likes. And I'm really curious. I want to know why people dislike certain videos. Because I know there's definitely some things that maybe you guys were taught wrong. There's some things that maybe what you're taught isn't necessarily wrong, but it kind of causes problems with your learning. Maybe it focuses on the wrong details. And this is just based on my experience, so when I talk about something like vowel length and how you shouldn't pay attention to that, you should focus on the stress. Apparently that's a controversial topic that people disagree with. So I'm just curious as to why exactly. But anyway, if you're more curious about that, and you haven't seen the lesson, you can go ahead and watch this lesson. Majid Ibrahim, sorry, can't pronounce your name. Probably said that horribly, but thanks for the effort. Put you up on the screen here. You are very welcome. I'm here to try to help you guys out. Give you guys best tips, give you guys real English. Right now I'm working on a contractions lesson, first contractions lesson. And that's going to, there might be a little bit of controversy in that as well, because you guys are usually taught that contractions are informal. They are not. So if, growing up, especially if you were taught by a non-native teacher and they say contractions are informal, only use them if you're speaking informally. It's nonsense. Joe is here. Welcome, Joe. How to pronounce turtle. Turtle. Okay, that's a difficult one. David is also here. You're looking good. Well, thank you. With the glare in my glasses, yeah. Welcome, David. Always glad to see you. So how do you pronounce turtle? Well, we have, it's a tough word. And it's a little deceiving, right? When we have that the UR spelling is generally most commonly just going to be pronounced okay. Remember the way I teach you guys that is a consonant and a vowel. You don't have to ever do like a schwa and an This is one of the details actually that goes right back to what I was just talking about, how maybe things that you're taught aren't wrong, like academically, right? Like is a consonant, it's not a vowel sound. But the way that I speak and the way that you can speak and still sound perfectly natural, perfectly neutral, is to make into a vowel. Now there's also R colored vowels, there's R, there's, ear, whatever, but just the basic sound, like in turtle, or if we say earth, or we say, I don't know, search, right? Whatever it is, the standard way that it's taught, you go to the dictionary and it says, okay, there's this little schwa and then there's an So it's like or something like that. Now, the difference between doing that and just doing straight as a vowel sound and not even doing a little schwa before it, the difference in sound is so small that it doesn't make any difference and nobody will hear the difference. So that's a perfect example of something that is objectively true. It describes the way that some native speakers speak. Um, but you don't have to do that to sound natural and neutral, right? That's one reason why this channel is English Hacks, because I'm giving you tips and tricks to make it easier to speak that still give you the same result without, needing to do everything just based on the one neutral accent, which that's another thing. There's not one neutral accent in American English. It's called General American for a reason. There's a range of accents that all generally sound neutral. So anyway, how do we pronounce turtle? You have a T. Okay, that's a stress syllable. It's a strong T. T, t, t. We go into tur, tur, tur. Just like turn, also into except there's an N at the end. Tur. The second part is harder. Okay. We have another T, which in this case is not going to be pronounced as a T. Then we have LE. Remember, don't focus on spelling. Don't focus on your eyes. Focus on your ears. Always focus on your ears, because we're talking about pronunciation. We're not talking about spelling. We're talking about pronunciation. Sounds are auditory. Sounds use your ears. So the E is silent. Okay. There's no E sound. There's no any sound there. It's just ul. Okay. Now, this is commonly taught as the dark L. I teach it as the half L vowel. And one of the reasons why I call it a vowel is because it generally works. Well, the reason I call it a vowel is because it generally works as a vowel. But one of the reasons why I say that is this is a perfect example. Because what happens to a T when it's at the start of an unstressed syllable, or a D, same thing with T and D, when it's at the start of an unstressed syllable and it's between two vowel sounds, it flaps. Turtle, turtle, da, 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 da. We get that flap D. Turtle, turtle, turtle. Okay. Now, of course, some people are going to say, well, yeah, there's actually supposed to be a little schwa there. No, again, just like with the you don't have to put a little schwa. You can go straight into ul, use it directly as a vowel. It's going to sound perfectly fine. And then this is something that doesn't make sense to me, because the sound before the T, if is a consonant and not actually a vowel, and you're supposed to put like the little schwa and then the R, that would mean that the T couldn't flap, because it needs to be between two vowels, right? At least generally, if nothing else. So we have all the conditions. Use as a vowel, use ul as a vowel, flap the D in between. Turtle. Okay. And I think one reason why some people dislike some of my more controversial content is because they look at what everybody else is saying and they're like, wait, this is not what I was taught. This can't be right. You have to be lying. You have to be, not teaching us real English. But it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. Plus, remember, I'm giving you hacks. I'm giving you things that you can do that will still sound perfectly fine, still sound natural, still sound neutral. That's another perspective, another way to look at it, to actually get the results you want instead of just following the normal standard framework that everybody teaches. Okay. So that's how you pronounce turtle. Moving on. Let's see who else we have. Majed. Sorry, Majed. I'm going to pronounce it wrong either way. Arabic names are difficult. Yes. Especially, I know you guys have a lot of kh, right? That's a common sound in Arabic that we don't really have. And I don't know much of Arabic. Arabic is on my long list of languages. I have a short list of like 5 or 6 languages that I want to eventually become very fluent in. But Arabic is on my long list. So I might eventually learn Arabic. It's an interesting seeming language. The script is definitely interesting. King Lion Play is here. Says, hey, welcome. Okay, we have an ordinary guy with a couple questions going on here. Welcome, ordinary guy. Body versus buddy. Are they all pronounced the same? No, they're not. The first two are. I'm not. Is the second one even a word? Let's see. Body. Oh, it is a word. Interesting. Okay, so and it's marked as post-college level. Now, there's a thing about advanced fancy vocabulary, right? Use it if you want. But if a generally educated individual, such as myself, uh, doesn't recognize a word or has never heard or seen a word before, there's a good chance that you don't need it. And a lot of other people, I don't want to say most necessarily, but probably most, if not at least a lot of other people, aren't going to understand it. Um, Now, I'm not making an argument for dumbing down your vocabulary, but you should just be aware of that. But body and body, let me double check the pronunciation just to see. Yeah, it looks like it would be the same. I would definitely pronounce it the same. Body and body would be pronounced the same. Buddy, the last one, uses a. Okay, buddy. Uh, Whoops, is that the right one? Okay, another one from King Lion Play. I thought that was the same person. Sorry. um, I have troubles pronouncing the dark L or the half L as Uve said before. What? Oh, as you've. Yeah, I was like, what? At least put an apostrophe there. See, because the E is also silent, so I'm just like, I don't even recognize that. Like maybe U apostrophe V, that would still be confusing, but yeah, text shortcuts aren't always the best thing to do. Anyway, I have troubles pronouncing the dark L or half L, as you've said before. I do everything what different videos told me to do, pull my tongue back, but it's still off. Okay, now there's probably a very, very good reason for that. I'm going to give you two keys. The first key, let me ask you, have you been through the phase 0 lesson of the mouth posture course? Do you even know about the mouth posture course? If you don't, I'll give you a link right now for everybody else who is here. This is literally the secret sauce that is going to give you that L sound. Let me see, playlists, this one, copy. Go check it out. Now, the very first lesson in that playlist is kind of just like a introduction to the concept of mouth posture and this and that, and how like the schwa is actually slightly different depending on your mouth posture and language and dialect and stuff like that. But the mouth posture is the key. Now, phase 0 is the first step to being able to get the mouth posture. Even if you don't like mouth posture, if you don't want to do the mouth posture course, if you're like, this is too complicated and boring, phase 0 is literally like, if you do nothing else, if you only watch one video on my channel and do one exercise or one lesson that I can point you to, that I say, this is the single biggest lesson that will improve your English pronunciation and by extension, your speaking and your listening skills, phase 0. It is that powerful. It is that important. Everybody that I've worked with on the mouth posture course so far, once they get into phase 2, where we actually start building the sounds, they get about, say through the first group of sounds, they look back on phase 0 and everything starts making sense. And they say phase 0 is the most important work that I have ever done in my entire life for my accent. Okay. Because what phase 0 is designed to do, it's my attempt to give you what I do naturally. Okay. When I'm trying to like get the pronunciation of a language, it doesn't include certain techniques explicitly necessarily, but you have to be able to feel what's going on. There's some teachers, apparently, I recently learned, that say like, oh, don't worry about how it sounds. You should focus on the feeling. You should definitely focus on the feeling for sure. You need to feel it. But you also, through this process, you need to train your ears for sound quality. So like, for example, if, and you need to isolate parts of your vocal tract and move them independently. Because if I say like, okay, the sound, uses the middle of the tongue, you're going to sort of bunch up. It doesn't matter what the tip does, whatever. And you need enough space here so that, it still sounds clear. So if you're trying to do and I know you said L, I'm going to come back to that. But if you're trying to do and you say like, surprisingly, to me at least, a lot of the students I work with, they don't hear that restriction. They don't see what the problem is. And that's very interesting to me as a teacher, because I mean, obviously I speak American English, so I know how it should sound. But at the same time, I can hear that, there's some sort of tightness or restriction back here that is interfering with the sound. Maybe everything else is perfect, but you have that restriction. So you have to be able to say, okay, well, the sound is here, but then I also need to control this, make sure this is out of the way, make sure that, I sort of settle down, that I'm not holding the top of my throat too high, because that's part of the posture. It's going to help you sound clearer and more open. Um, but if you can't control, say, if you can't do this and do this at the same time, you're not going to get the R, right? You may not have the muscle to get the R into the right place. That's another thing. You have to actually build the muscle. And if you've never done that kind of work before and you're just trying to produce the sounds, even me, right? I tend to explain things in a way that a lot of people are like, wow, the way that you explained it allowed me to finally get it. Thank you so much. And that's fantastic. I'm really glad about that. But for a lot of people, even if, say, I'm not saying mine is the best way to do it, but let's pretend I have the best explanation. Okay. If you can't feel and you can't, say, manipulate this while manipulating this in two different ways at the same time, you're in trouble. That is the foundational skill to being able to produce the sounds. Okay. It's not, sounds don't just float in a void where it's just like, oh, okay, the sound is here. Rrr. You got to listen to the quality. You have to figure out how to build that muscle, how to manipulate the pieces independently so that you can get into the right position. Now, that's phase 0. That's going to give you the basic skills you need to isolate the different parts of the front of the tongue, middle of the tongue, back of the tongue, the throat, top of the throat. Okay. Get you into a right general position, get you some basic skills to actually manipulate things. Then, as you go through the course, phase 1, phase 2, which is all going to be free here on YouTube, uh, that will actually go and teach you how to get the American English mouth posture. And then once you have that posture, you need to build that posture into every single sound. So going into the dark L, I can almost guarantee you, having never heard you try to produce the half L, just you coming to me with this question saying I can't get it. Um, I can almost guarantee you that you either A, don't have enough control of your tongue, or B, you don't have the right mouth posture. I can almost guarantee that. I haven't worked with too many people on the L sound yet, the half L, because not many people have gotten that far in the course yet. But there's a couple that I've worked with, and it seems that that's in group 2. That's not even group 1. We don't tackle that in the first group of sounds. But the first group of sounds help you build even further skills to start holding that mouth posture in the sounds. And then when we get to, say, like the L and the R and some of the harder sounds, you actually have subtler control and better skill to actually hold the posture in the sound. So when you're trying to do any sound, in this case, the half L, the dark L, it's not that you have to form the sound. That's true. But you also have to hold the posture, which means this needs to be lower, held open a little bit more. It's not completely relaxed. Don't be deceived by other people, because when you hold, which this may not be true for your language specifically, but it does seem many languages compared to American English, the top of the throat is held higher, a little tighter, and the tongue tends to be pushed forward so that you have that space there, because otherwise the tongue's in the way. Now, if you're holding that and you try to do the half L, especially, let's see. Oh, I just don't have space. I can't do it. Right. I'm doing the sound right. I'm even keeping this part of the posture, but because this is out of place, it's impossible to form the sound. You need to get that space. Right. I kind of lost track of exactly what I was saying there, but the point is, you need to set this. You need to get that posture. You need to build that posture into the sound, because if I try to do but let's say this is open, but I don't have that core posture. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, maybe that's how you're sounding. I don't know. But what I'm doing there is I'm letting this part of my tongue be completely flat instead of having that little bit of tension from the core mouth posture. Of course, still trying to keep this. So this is the back part of the posture that needs to be in place also. But if you flatten out that posture and you don't have that, some sounds will be impossible or very, very difficult to make and will probably not sound perfect. Maybe they'll sound pretty good, but they probably won't sound perfect, almost guaranteed. And when you get that mouth posture and you learn how to hold that mouth posture, things become a lot easier. Okay, it's literally the secret sauce. It's the silver bullet that I'm trying to give to you guys. Just like, here, do it. And I'm seeing really amazing results with the people I'm working with as I continue to develop the course. So what I would do, what I would recommend, if nothing else, go through phase 0. Do the exercises, put in the work. It's boring. I'm going to warn you, it's boring. Everybody hates phase 0. And yet, as I said, when they get to a certain point, they look back and they're like, wow, I'm really glad I did that. Okay. It's the Miyagi element from the Karate Kid, right? Wax on, wax off. If you haven't seen that movie, The Karate Kid, karate, we pronounce it with a D, Karate Kid, go watch it. Wax on, wax off, paint the house. He's teaching him the basic muscular control and movements that he needs without teaching him karate. One day he gets fed up and he's like, I'm done. I'm leaving. You're not teaching me karate. And then he tries to punch him in the face. And what does he do? He blocks. Wax on. Okay. And then now he's ready to actually learn karate. That's what phase 0 is. You're not ready to build the accent. You're not ready to try to form some of the sounds until you go through phase 0, because if you can't control things, you're wasting your time. Okay. You're wasting your time. Now you can learn the hard way, use micro adjustments, figure it out as you go. I guess that's a valid approach if it works for you, but get that basic control first. Then I highly recommend you build the core posture, start building into the sounds. And if you still can't get the sound, I would be very surprised. But it's not easy work. It's not easy work. And feedback is super important. You need to listen to exact sound quality, things like that. Okay. An ordinary guy. Again, why in the words doesn't or wasn't the Z often is not pronounced in fast speech. So like if I say it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Done, 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 done. Or I won there. I won there. This can actually sound a little informal. If you're speaking super, super, super fast, like where things start breaking, definitely you can drop the Z. I think what happens more often than not, it's not that we necessarily drop the Z, although it's possible, but we'll hit that Z very, very lightly and quickly, and you might not actually hear it. So if I say like doesn't, there's still a little Z in there that I'm making. But why? Because the way that American English speech works, this is generally true of English, but especially American English, it's not what is the right answer, it's what's most likely based on circumstances. That's the range concept. Okay, I'm going to be making a lesson for that. I know I've said that many, many times. I want to finish the mouth posture course before I make the range lesson, because I tried to make it last week and I just realized that this is going to be so much more powerful to make after I make the mouth posture course, which, by the way, the range of pronunciation things is going to be built into the mouth posture course to some extent. But it affects the formation of sounds. There's a full and lazy version of every single sound. It affects reductions, it affects words, it affects dropping sounds, this and that. If you're speaking slowly and clearly, you cannot drop the Z. If I say it done work, you're not saying doesn't, you're saying done, which is not a word. But if I say it doesn't work, okay, because we're speaking faster, because we're speaking generally more lazily, certain things can happen that wouldn't otherwise happen either in slow, clear speech or maybe even in normal speed speech. Most of the things that happen will generally be in normal speed speech. That's where a lot of the linking rules happen, this and that, whatever. But the reality of the speech is that it's a range. It's a range. And the way that you guys, everything that I've seen, maybe there's somebody else talking about this concept in some way, everything that I've seen from other teachers, from other resources, nobody talks about that. They sort of give you like the perfect, like, oh, this is how you form this sound and you pull your lips back for E. It's like, yeah, for the fully enunciated version, sure. But if you actually look at native speakers' lips, probably 7, 8, 9 out of 10 E's either only pull the lips back a little bit or not at all. E, 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 E. See, I told you. See, you don't need to do this to form the sound. Okay. Now, if I'm enunciating, I say C, there's a reason why that happens. It's not because that's required for the sound. It's based on what we're saying and how we're saying it. I'm emphasizing, I want to make it clear. See? So because the sound is so closed, that E sound is relative, it's high up in the mouth and this and that. The jaw generally doesn't move. You learn that in phase 1 of the mouth posture course. It generally stays where it is, more or less. But because the E is so high in the mouth, it naturally creates less space. And so in order to make it clearer, what do we do? Well, the only thing we can do is widen the lips. So it's a natural thing to do. Okay. Anyway, nice to hear that. Good luck. Welcome. Thank you, Majid. So we're gonna move on here. Delio is here 13 minutes ago. Sorry, Delio. You know how I work. I just go through the stuff and we work our way through. But yes, thanks for stopping by. Let me know if you have questions. Interact with others. Fantastic. David with the questions today. All right. Or comments or something. See what David has to say. So I've recently discovered that words like measure, treasure, and pleasure use the third vowel where the third vowel is followed by the "zer" ending, okay, can also be pronounced as azure, measure. Okay. Measure. How do you measure it? That's the treasure. I'm going to assume either no, I want to know where you heard that, or 2, maybe the EI. I assume you're referring to the A diphthong, but maybe that's the miscommunication. Absolutely not. I've never heard a native speaker of any dialect say these words that way. So I'd like to know where you heard that. Maybe you noticed it from natives and it's a regional thing. I don't know. Just let me know where that's coming from. You'll find these in dictionaries as well. There's also leisure, which is an E, spelled A, but it's an E, which doesn't usually happen. That can also be pronounced leisure, of course. Yeah, that's probably where that's coming from. Leisure, it's 2 pronunciations. I usually use leisure. But that one is trickier because lay can be pronounced as lay. Yeah, le, lee, or lay. Leisure, again, never heard that before in my life. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I had no idea. Well, probably because it doesn't exist. I don't know. I'm really confused right now. God, wow, you guys are really blowing up the comments. I'm never going to catch up. I guess I'll try to go a little faster here. Is this like the egg, which, by the way, guys, you can always do super chats if you want me to answer more quickly or, whatever it is. I'm trying to be fair to people, and until we get big enough to the point where I literally cannot answer everybody's comments, I'm going to try to go in order step by step. And I know I have to be more efficient at that, but there's always the option of super chats. Is this like the egg, leg situation? I would say no. And what is it about changing to A before certain voice sounds in some dialects? Some dialects would be the key, yes. Definitely not standard English, I would say. As far as I know, this never happens with unvoiced consonants. Pressure is always pressure, never pressure. Well, again, I think measure is always measure and never measure. So that wouldn't be any different. Hi from IN. Welcome. Hi, yes, glad to have you. Now, when you say IN, unfortunately, I'm an American, which means I suck at geography. One of the downsides of living, being born and raised in the empire. But I'm going to assume that's either India or Indonesia. That's what comes to my mind. Either way, I mean, you can specify if you want, or I can look it up if I'm not lazy, but I don't want to take extra time. But thank you. Yes, welcome. Always glad to hear where people are from. Let me know if you have any questions. Euroka, welcome. Pleasure, leisure sounds super weird to me. Yes, thank you, Euroka. We're on the same page. By the way, don't pay any attention to the dislikes, please. Anyone who takes the time to listen to where you're coming from and why you approach certain things the way you do would never hit the dislike button. Well, thank you, David, for the support. I mean, I can't always give the full context for everything, like if I re-explain everything in the same video. So I understand not everybody's going to like it, but it kind of sucks. I try to keep the sort of the Taoist Bhagavad Gita / Gary V. Yeah, interestingly enough, type mentality where um, you're neither affected by hot or cold, right? That's the true meaning of detachment. It's not that you're detached from the world; it's that you're equally unaffected by either extreme. So, I try to detach myself not only from the dislikes but also from the likes, because if you get caught in one, you're going to get caught in the other. Now, of course, I want the likes, all this stuff, but also, right, when people give me dislikes, most of my videos don't have any dislikes, or maybe they'll just have like one or two compared to like 30 likes, 50 likes. And that's fine. That's going to happen sometimes. Sometimes, like one of the recent shorts I published, I actually have the most dislikes that I've ever had and like the worst like to dislike ratio I've ever had. It's like 78% or something, which is still pretty good. But that tells me, that actually gives me good information, because that tells me I struck a nerve. And that is, I mean, I don't want to, beat a dead horse or necessarily, especially in the short term, but that tells me, oh, okay, so long term, this is something that I need uh, to talk more about, right? And because if nothing else, right, the thing people don't understand is if you dislike it, that's engagement. The YouTube algorithm will say, oh, you don't like this, we won't show you more of this. But then it's like, somebody engaged on it, let's show it to more people who also might engage with it. So you're actually helping the content. So it's a win-win for me. I don't really care. But I do want to know why people dislike it, because number one, I can either dismiss it because maybe they just think I'm wrong, and I don't think I'm wrong. Number two, maybe I am wrong. Maybe somebody can prove to me that I'm wrong in some way. But if they just dislike and they don't comment, I don't know their reasoning or where they're coming from. Or if they don't tell me why they dislike, I don't know how I can improve. Right. So that's feedback. Just like I tell you guys, use your ears, you get feedback. Feedback is very important for skill building. It's the same with me. Like, I need feedback from you guys, whether you like or dislike something, so that I can know how to improve. Because otherwise I'm just going to try to do whatever I think is best and see what the results are, which also is part of the game, and you have to try anyway. Same, I don't think it's very common, because I've never actually heard anyone say it like that, except for Measure. Interesting. Okay. It's really interesting. It seems like a majority or a major discovery right there. I don't know. Measure is very common. Is it? Are you sure? I mean, I don't think the dictionary is the best source of pronunciation information, but dictionary.com only lists measure. I don't know what kind of dictionaries you guys are using. Let's try Merriam-Webster. Measure. If I don't put a W at the end of it. Share my screen too. That would probably be useful, since I can do that now. Measure some other thing, whatever the heck that is. Oh, okay. Merriam-Webster lists measure as a pronunciation. I don't know, guys. All I know is my personal recommendation: never, ever, ever, ever use a in these words. I don't know what native would pronounce it that way. I've never heard it in my life. It doesn't make any sense to me. So you definitely risk sounding like you have a regional dialect, in my opinion. At the end of the day, if you like how it sounds, go ahead. But I can guarantee you that probably most of the people that you interact with, they're going to be like, why is he saying it that way? Or why is she saying it that way? It's going to be distracting. Could you point out the difference in pronunciation of the words of men and man? I have a problem with that. Yeah, so I've talked about this before, actually. Going to refer you to a video content. I'm pretty sure I talked about it in this lesson. Truth about yeah. I don't know if I addressed the and versus n specifically. I might have, but either way, that's a good video to watch. The truth about a before n and m. This definitely go watch that video. You're going to learn a lot of interesting and useful things about which is going to help solve the problem. I definitely do not have time to like go into all that right now because there's lots of little details of what can affect it. But the biggest difference that you're hearing and the biggest problem, number one, you need to be able to hear the difference between and be able to produce the difference between and a. If you can't do that, you can't hear it or produce it, that's your starting point. Don't even worry about the n. The secret that doesn't seem to get talked about too much is that all vowels before n and m, and probably also ng, the back n, ng, all vowels before m and n are, or at least can be, partially nasalized. I have a whole lesson on that as well. You can just English hacks, nasalization or something like that will probably come up. But in many vowels, it's not noticeable. It doesn't stand out very much. So if I say mean, okay, mean, you probably just hear the E. But if I drop the N and I just say me, okay, me, mean, me. There's a little bit of nasalization, nowhere near what you should be using if you're a Portuguese speaker, French speaker, or some other, many Asian languages have extra nasality. You don't want it to be too much. But when we do my theory here is because the nasal flap is up here, the is such a extreme position in the opposite, literally the exact opposite part of the mouth, that nasality stands out a little bit more, and that's one of the biggest things that can make it sound different. Now, when you're comparing men and man, again, get the basics and a, and then do minimal pairs for n and an. That's what I would recommend. Go to forvo.com. But you might find some weird recordings for this particular case because there's some variation, but basically the difference is simple. It doesn't seem this simple, but it is simple. One has an followed by an n, and that will probably be partially nasalized. One has an a followed by an n, and that a will pretty much guaranteed be partially nasalized. It's basically the and the a difference. Because if I say me and ma with no n after it, it's the same essential basic difference, just with a little extra nuance to it. Are the words berry and berry pronounced the same? Depends on your pronunciation. People who, so there's the Mary merger. Mary. This is a merger that most Americans have. It's just part of standard general American English. Some Americans don't. Most received pronunciation British English doesn't either, as far as I know. But most Americans have this merger where they're pronounced the same. So berry. Okay. In fact, this one is also pronounced the same. Berry. Okay. Now that's a weird spelling for that, but it's air, berry. I was talking about earlier how you are usually represents usually, not always. If you don't have that merger, as some Americans don't, there's the R-colored a. Okay, so BERRY and BURY uses the R-colored air, where the and people who have the merger will pronounce the AR also like that. But people who don't have the merger and they have the R-colored they'll say Barry, something like that. It's weird, really awkward and weird for me to do, unless maybe I do a lazy but you can't hear it as clearly there. So my advice, pronounce them the same. Make your life easier. You'll sound perfectly natural and neutral, no problem. One of the things that drives me crazy about this particular point, though, is I'm pretty sure the standard way that it's taught is Barry and Berry, which just like the cot merger, like the cot merger is slowly taking over. It's becoming the default pronunciation. Why are you still teaching the other one? Anyway, Thank you. I was mind blown, to be honest. It never ceases to amaze me how many variations there are, and I always wonder what caused them to occur. Yeah, well, what caused them to occur, I don't particularly care necessarily, but it is what it is. And that was a response to Delio. But yeah, there's lots of differences, and you can speak however you want. But if you want a general standard sounding neutral accent, there's certain things that you can't do, like say measure. If the word ends with an R sound, so welcome Timberland. If the word ends with an R sound, did I drink all my drink? I don't know. I have too many cans. This is cold. Probably just drink poison. That's okay. I don't know if that's the one I was drinking or not. Anyway, if the word ends with R and the next sound begins with R, for example, her room, how do natives pronounce it? Very good question. You're going to, now if you're speaking normal speed, you're probably going to just slightly extend that R. Her room, her room. Just like if we have two L's, you'll slightly extend the L. If you have two S's, you'll slightly extend the S. But if you're speaking quickly enough, it doesn't necessarily have to be super, super fast, but if it's at least on the faster side of normal, it is possible to just make it into a single R. Her room, her room, her room, her room. No problem. So again, that goes to the whole range thing. That's the reality of speech. You're opening Pandora's box with this one. Yeah. Can versus can't is another common issue. Yeah, I've already solved that one. Hello, not too many questions today. Well, that's probably good, Wendell, because I don't know if I can keep up. Oh my God, Miyagi Element. We love the king of pop culture references. That is the strangest sentence I've ever heard anybody direct towards me, because I am completely out of the pop culture loop, like almost entirely. That's not why I use it, but I get what you mean. What's the difference in pronunciation between proceed and proceed? Well, if you say them clearly, the first one would be, can we say proceed? Yeah. First one, you can say proceed. So you can say it with an O. It's still not stressed. It's proceed, proceed. The second one would be precede. So it's an E, precede. So like I talked about in the vowel length lesson, yes, you can have an E in an unstressed syllable. That's the fully enunciated version. However, when we have a sound like O or a sound like E, they tend, in an unstressed syllable like that, they tend to kind of collapse or reduce, right? So they can both reduce to a schwa, proceed. So how should I proceed? Or what precedes that? Exactly the same. So most of the time you're going to pronounce them exactly the same. I don't think you really ever have to say the O or the E, maybe if you're really emphasizing the word, but even then, like, it's just so common to reduce it that that's the easy thing to do. Okay, so aural and owl start with the same sound. Do they, though? And how is aural pronounced in general American English, standard American English? Well, that also depends on the exact neutral accent that we're talking about. For people who don't have the cot-cot merger, which is not the neutral standard accent, it's one neutral standard accent. It is an accent, but it sounds neutral. That would be more like oral, all, with that rounded all sound backwards C. People who do have the cot-cot merger, which is me and an increasing number of people across the country, and how I teach you, the way that you can make your life easier and you'll still sound very natural and neutral, is to use aural. Okay. Now, so either way, whichever one you want to do is fine. It doesn't matter. I recommend aural because it's easier. That's how I teach you. But you have a misunderstanding here. they do not start with the same sound. Owl starts with ow. Okay, whether somebody has the merger or not for aural, they don't start with the same sound in any way. Now I think owl, yeah, whether you have the merger or not, they're not the same sound. I was thinking of something else, but no, that's a different thing. So yeah, no, they don't start with the same sound at all. Owl starts with the diphthong ow, and then it goes into the ul. Aural starts with the vowel ah, but it's the R colored ah, so it's gonna maybe seem like it's a little bit different. Not at all the same sound. No, completely different. I wonder what the dictionary says. Maybe you're misled by the dictionary. I would be really surprised if the dictionary says it's the same sound. Let's see here. I have no idea where you got that. Maybe it's just like that's what you hear, and we need a little bit more ear training, possibly. Okay, so that says backwards C because dictionaries are stupid and they only go off of the one neutral accent that's generally taught. Owl. At least the dictionary I'm looking at, not even close to the same starting sound. I guess I'll leave the dictionary open. Okay, moving on. Also, is moral pronounced? How is moral pronounced? How is it different from the pronunciation of more? So, well, it's pronounced exactly like more. It's again, if you don't have the merger, you're probably going to say or. If you do have the merger, like I teach you, this will actually be the R colored O or. Okay, not R or. Again, you'll still sound perfectly fine. So moral and more, moral and more. The first part, the more part, is exactly the same, but you have to add ul to the first word. And the easiest way to do that is, as I was talking about earlier, you don't have to add a little schwa sound. You can just use ul, the dark L, the half L vowel. So I call it the half L vowel. You can use it as a vowel directly. So you're going from straight into ul. You don't have to say like moral. You can say moral, roll, moral. Okay. Moving on. Thank you so much. I'm gonna check out your playlist. No problem. I think I got a little Japanese there. Itadakimasu. Too much anime. Which actually I've been so focused on trying to improve my content over the last few days. I have anime that I have to catch up on, which makes me sad. Too much to do. Bonsai. And what syllable receives primary stress? Bonsai. Okay, the O-N, I want to read that also as on. Bone, I guess. Bonsai, 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 bonsai. I think occasionally I've heard people use pronunciations other than bonsai, the last one. But the one that I've definitely heard like much more than anything else is the last one. If you were to ask me, how do you pronounce this word? And you just spelled Bonsai, I would just say bonsai. That's the only way to say it. So I would ignore the rest. What syllable receives primary stress? The first one. Bonsai. Bonsai. I know it could be a little weird because with that ah, which has the stress, and the zai, kind of, it's like, okay, because it's a diphthong, right? So it can seem a little longer. Maybe in some way it is a little bit longer. It doesn't matter. Bonsai. See, if I do bonsai, that would be the different stress, right? Now we can really hear the role of that stress there rather than the vowel length. Bonsai, bonsai, bonsai. So, okay, can you tell us more about the word ain't? Welcome, Dusha. Dusha. Dusha, I guess maybe. I have no idea how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna butcher names all day. But yes, welcome. Thank you for asking a question. Thanks for joining us here. The word ain't, short and simple. It's informal. Okay, it's definitely informal. As my second grade English teacher loved to tell us, ain't a word. And when I tell that to some of my students, they get confused and they're like, wait, what? So ain't is, well, it can replace every version of to be in the present tense. So like I'm not, you're not, he's not, we're not, they're not, et cetera, right? She's not, it's not. It can replace all of those in the present tense. So I ain't, you ain't, he ain't, she ain't, we ain't, it ain't, they ain't. I'm pretty sure it originated in African American vernacular. I'm not sure. And then through pop culture, it had a big impact. But I mean, even as a kid, like we were saying this, maybe it goes back. I don't know how far. It probably goes back like at least 50 years. I have no idea. But it's informal. It's definitely informal. I use it myself. But most English teachers will say, "Oh, don't use that. That's wrong. It's grammatically incorrect." Blah 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 blah. You can use it, but it's informal. Okay, that it's part of real English. So if you're at work, don't use it. But if you're talking to a friend, you can. Now, I do recommend that you don't try to use it as a shortcut. Like if you have trouble just speaking with normal, like I'm not, he's not, you're not, and that's not very natural and automatic to you, don't use ain't. But if you have a pretty good command over the language, maybe you're say like really upper intermediate to advanced and you feel pretty comfortable and you want to throw that into your informal speech, you can do that. Now that doesn't mean like just because you're speaking informally, you should say ain't all the time. That actually might kind of stand out and be a little annoying to some speakers. But you know, like me, I'll throw it in every once in a while for certain effect. What was that? Oh, I'm bleeding. Huh. Anyway. That's okay. I'm fine. I'm not going to die. We'll usually use it for a certain effect, right? So like, it kind of makes it sound, I guess, a little more, I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah, that's the tough part. But just don't use it all the time in your informal speech, or you can just choose to never use it at all. You don't have to use it. Are the words warm and worm pronounced the same in American English? No, they are absolutely not. I have a whole lesson. This is a very big, important lesson. Vowel. Okay. This is my main lesson for the R sound that you're going to want to watch if you haven't watched already, and it helps to sort of explain some of this. There's certain spelling patterns for the sound. And then of course there's sometimes where it's not it might be or, r, ear, probably not ear. There are some cases like that, but usually it's between like or and r most of the time, I think. But anyway, you see the spelling patterns, the sort of shortcut that I give you, which again, we want to focus on the sound, not the spelling, but it can kind of just be a little thing in your brain to be like, okay, I think this is usually supposed to be this way, but then what do you actually hear, right? So ER, if you see spelling ER, IR, typing is really slow, IR, or UR, with no silent E at the end, nothing extra. It's just that's what you see for the vowel part. Because the silent E is a common thing we use to change the pronunciation of words, like a becomes a, cat becomes Kate. You put a silent E at the end. That's a spelling thing. That's a different topic. But usually when you say E, when you see ER, IR, UR, they're going to be pronounced just It's just Okay. Now, if you do it the way some Americans do it, where you do a little schwa and then the R, that's fine. Or if you do it the way I teach you and you just do straight as a vowel sound, that's also fine. It doesn't matter. When you see OR, with one big exception, but when you see OR, if it's in a stressed syllable, it's going to be pronounced or. Okay. That's a pretty much 100% rule. There's probably a couple exceptions here and there, but that's a very, very solid rule. OR in a stressed syllable is or. If that OR is in an unstressed syllable, it's still possible to say it as or, but it will usually reduce to Okay, so just like ER, IR, UR, if OR is unstressed, it doesn't matter for the other ones if they're stressed or not, but if OR is in an unstressed syllable, it'll be pronounced the same as the others and just be pronounced So more often than not, you're going to be saying right? So a good example of that is which I just retyped the same thing. If I say this or that, okay, you don't have to say this or that. Usually you're going to hear people say this or that, this or. It's just now, if you emphasize, you say, no, you have to pick this or that. that's when it's most likely to get that stress. We're saying it more clearly, we're emphasizing it, so you can bring that O sound back in. And it's always possible to say it with the O, the or part, but it in the flow of normal speech most of the time, like 9 times out of 10, it's just gonna be if it's not in a stress syllable. Then the AR spelling, this is the stupid thing that's its own little monster. It depends on the word. It really depends on the word. It might be or, it might be air, maybe I don't know about air. It might be or, it might be sometimes. Like wizard would be ARD there. It's wizard. It's just an sound. So for a lot of the spellings for R sounds, it's very common that it's actually just going to be instead of an R colored vowel. That being said, these two particular words, very counterintuitive, okay? Because, right, if I say this word, spelled AR, but it's not war, it's war. Now, if you don't have the merger, you're probably gonna use that backward C and say like war, which can sound kind of like R, but it's not R, it's R. Again, with the merger, it makes your life so much easier, so much simpler. But a byproduct of the merger is that instead of just having R, we also now have, which actually I'm not sure how the unmerged version works with the R colored vowels. But anyway, we have some, most things turned into R. I don't even remember the thing. I talk about it in the lesson, or in the R colored vowel lesson. But you have cases that turn into R, you have cases that turn into OR when you have the merger. Okay, warm, WARM, is actually pronounced with an R colored O. Probably because in the unmerged version it's or. So we change that into or. Warm, warm. Okay. Now the second one is spelled OR, but it's not pronounced OR. And that's because of the one big exception to the OR spelling. When you have WOR, now words like sword, which has a silent W, important. Sword, it's or, but the W is silent. Okay, so that doesn't count. Just because you see the spelling, again, we want to go on sound, not your eyes, not spelling. But when you see, if there's a word with WOR and it's a stressed syllable, which it should be, so worm, word, work, worth, worthy, etc., even though it's stressed and spelled OR, it's just pronounced That's the one big exception to the OR thing, where even if if it's stressed, it's supposed to be or, but it will actually change into even though it's stressed. It's a nice little group because it's consistent, but it's an exception to that rule. Okay, moving on. So you have warm and worm. Warm, worm. I know it's English. It's stupid. Coming back to the wasn't question. Am I imagining things, or do some natives low key say wasn't and wouldn't? Wouldn't. No, that does exist. Wouldn't. To me, that sounds a little bit like AAVE, African American vernacular. But it could also just happen in like lazy speech. I'm sure that I probably use it at some point as well. That for most people, you just ignore it. You never have to say it that way. Like, don't make your life complicated if you don't want to. Yeah, wasn't is wasn't. What did you say? Oh, I understood. I just understood you were giving both options. So that's fine. Do you speak other languages? Yes and no. Wow, you guys are really blowing up the chat. I don't think I'm going to be able to catch up today. Go faster. Go faster. I'm trying to improve, so I guess this is one way I can prove I can get through things faster and not linger. Do you speak other languages? I speak Spanish to a decent level. I'm very rusty right now, unfortunately. Not as quite good as I was, but I can still use it. I can still understand a lot of things. Very, very basic, very little Japanese, very, very basic German. I can form some, sentences and stuff. But I when I was learning Spanish, I had a few classes here and there, didn't really learn a whole lot. I'm mostly self-taught. And when I really decided to sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to learn a language, and because I hated the job that I had at the time, and I'm like, I didn't want to become a translator or something. Like, I need to get a better job. And I like languages. Apparently, I'm naturally good at languages according to some testing. And so I said, well, let's actually sit down and learn a language. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was literally researching. I found all the polyglots that I tell you guys about: Steve Kaufman, Benny Lewis, Idausen Ness, Luca Lampariello, Ollie Richards. Some of them I mentioned more than others, and there's more than that. Richard Simcott. I was just, and of course, we can't forget Moses McCormick. Rest in peace. But I was looking at a bunch of different ideas, right? All these polyglots have like all these different approaches and stuff, and they're all polyglots. And so I was just trying to try different things, explore different things, this and that. I had no idea what I was doing, aside from running on pure instinct. And I managed to get myself to a pretty decent level. And so that taught me a lot about how to learn a language, what are the different ways to learn a language. And I try to bring all of that to you guys. And that's why, right, this channel is not a pronunciation channel. A lot of people probably think it is because that's what I've talked most about. But it's not a pronunciation channel. The reason why there's so much pronunciation is because that's what I primarily started with. And at some point I decided I needed to leave other things behind and just focus on the pronunciation to really build that pillar of the channel, because pronunciation, right, when we're talking about the spoken language, you don't have to sound like a native, but if nothing else, for your listening, for your ear training, pronunciation, the sounds, and of course the stress and the rhythm and all the stuff that goes with pronunciation, but the sounds are the foundation of spoken language. We're talking about sound, and there's so many bad teaching things out there where they're teaching you like, oh, like, when you see, which sometimes some spelling rules are okay, that's fine, but they say like, oh, when you see this and it has a silent e, and blah blah blah, and you try to memorize all these rules about pronunciation instead of just engaging with the language. Listen to the language. It will show you all of its secrets. It will tell you all of its secrets if you just pay attention. Train your ears, not your eyes. Focus on the sound. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to move on because I'm ranting about an unrelated thing now. You get the point. Branding. Anyway, Euroka, native speaker here. Oh, okay. I do often say measure. Maybe it's affected by where I'm from, Oregon. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so we have a native speaker from the West Coast, just like me, from California. And you native speakers are probably like, what did he just say? That doesn't make any sense, but I know Euroka gets it. And okay, so then you probably speak Western American English, which is one of the broadly generally neutral accents that are in American English. Could be a regional thing. I mean, I'm not going to deny your experience as a native, right? Like, my intent here is not to say that's wrong and natives who do it don't speak right. That is not at all my intention in any way. But I'm going based off my experience, what, me as a native, what I've heard. I don't know, you, Euroka, like, I'm sure you hear measure because that's what I always hear. But then maybe growing up where you are, a lot of people also say measure. And so to you, it's like, well, there's two pronunciations for the same thing. But then you zoom out and like, I mean, it could be on my end, maybe measure is standard and we only ever use measure. And so that's what I'm exposed to. But I think usually it works the other way around. Usually it's the extra one that seems weird to another native that is regional, I think, in my experience. So yeah, I'm trying to give the best advice to a general audience. If people want to say measure, I guess they can. There's obviously a native who does it. I don't know if you've run into any situations where you're talking to somebody who's like not from where you're from, and maybe they probably won't say anything, if they understand what you're saying, but maybe you notice a certain expression or kind of like or something. I don't know. Or maybe people don't notice. I don't know. To me, it would stand out and it would be weird. So who knows? But your experience is, of course, valid as a native speaker. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. But to the average English learner, I would not recommend it because, in my experience, that's not the standard way to pronounce it. On pre-ply vocabulary test, never heard of that. I scored around 17,000 words. Nice, congratulations. How many words do you know as a native speaker? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Probably more than that. Now, I mean, there's different ways to look at that. I mean, there's like, it's more important to look at word families than words, because I mean, like run, runner, running, like that's 3 different words, but they're all part of the same word family. And there's been research done on that. Like, the average educated native has, this many word families, and this and that, whatever. But I don't know. I also don't have like the biggest vocabulary in the world. I come across new words sometimes, which I think is generally normal for most people. Like body, I didn't know that existed. BAWDY. So, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter too much. Like depending on what level of vocabulary you want, what level of expression you want, things like that. There are natives and non-natives alike who, they go for those fancier words and they try to learn as many words as possible, but there's definitely a point of diminishing returns where you start getting into a point where there are words that like maybe you'll never really have to use because it might be too, on a particular topic, like say within engineering, there's probably some terms that you're never going to have to use because you never talk about engineering, but you might be able to recognize those words passively. And then there's words that if you try to use, maybe they're just so relatively uncommon that the average speaker just doesn't understand the word that you're saying. There's a pretty high threshold for that, but there are things like that. So I don't really care. I'm focused with like, do you have personal vocabulary? Do you have common vocabulary? Can you express yourself to the level that you want to express yourself? So meaning, in other words, you're not limited by words. Right, grammar is a different thing, but are you, if you feel content with your level of words, it doesn't matter how much you have. You could have 5,000, like that works perfectly fine for a lot of people. If you're asking me, I have no idea. The number of words I know has never been important enough to find out. Yeah, exactly. I found a native speaker here on YouTube who speaks with no regional dialect, except he pronounces all instances of ng as n. Interesting. Among is amun. Wrong is Ron. Wow. That's completely wrong. That doesn't even make that. How? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm definitely bleeding there. I don't know what that is. That doesn't make any sense. Like, you're literally changing the word. I mean, among, sure, if you say among, that's not a word, but maybe there's some sort of weird merger going on in some part of the country. I don't know. Caribix making the entire map of Mirror HQ. He's probably wrong on this. I don't care enough. Well, I mean, I guess I can share my screen and my audio now that I'm on StreamYard. So let's take advantage of that. So first I'm going to come over here to YouTube, type in Caribix. I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. Share system audio. This one? No, Brave tab. This one. Still new to this, bear with me. Share. Oh God, what is happening? Okay. So you see me, I want to see what the setup here is. That's for guests. That's for media. That's a nice one. Let's do that. Okay. And I guess I need to put my headphones on so I can hear it. All right. So I'm going to come over here. Caribix. This is like really unnerving to me because like I'm over on the screen, but I can't see what you guys see. So like I don't see myself on this other tab, but I'm assuming it's showing you what I just saw in the StreamYard thing. Okay, anyway, so wait, what are we looking for? That was the question. Making the entire map of Mira. Okay, so Caribix making the entire map of Mira. Okay. Then 18 to 40. I assume it's this one. Yeah, that has to be okay.
Welcome back to another clay video. Today, we are going to create the entire map.
I don't even know what this is. Yeah, get it over.
I can already hear the comment section right now telling me how I'm saying Among Us wrong. I'll put some of those comments up on the screen. In the last video, I got so many
What
comments.
was that?
I'll put some of those comments up on the screen.
When he said screen, I'm hearing him say scream, which is interesting because that seems like a forward shift. Among, screen, scream. There might be something interesting going on.
In the last video, I got so many comments from you guys saying that I'm forgetting the G and I'm saying.
Yeah, see? So this is why you probably don't want to pronounce it like he does. Okay? Because it stands out. It definitely stands out. It's not normal.
The name wrong. So I looked up some YouTube videos of people playing the game so I could sort of hear how you say Among Us. And it doesn't sound any different to me, the way that I'm saying it.
Interesting. It doesn't sound different to him. Now, I'm assuming this guy's a native. I don't know. I'm noticing some very subtle things that kind of stand out with his speech, but he does generally sound neutral. If I weren't paying close attention, I probably wouldn't notice it necessarily. But if he's not noticing the difference, that to me, maybe it's a dialect thing. I don't know if it's an individual thing. If it's it could be an individual thing where like some brain wiring, right? I'm not saying this is bad or wrong or anything, but it could be that something is a little bit different with how his ears developed or how his speech developed. Just like me, I never used to be able to hear the cot merger. I never really noticed it. Sometimes it would stand out and I'd be like, why is he saying it that way? But usually I just wouldn't hear ah and aw. I would just hear ah because that's what I use. That's how I speak. That's what I hear most of the people around me use. And so I'm sure if he started paying attention and he had a little bit of training, he could probably develop the ability to hear it. But this is an interesting thing for sure.
So I'm going to keep saying that, and I hope you can still enjoy the video.
Okay. Anyway, back over to here. Stop screen. Okay. Very, very interesting. Nice little, I mean, that goes into probably, I would assume that goes into neuroscience, which is way beyond the scope of my focus here, but and definitely way beyond my expertise. Yeah. Okay. Claudio is here. Welcome. Commented half an hour ago. I'm so sorry. I'm so behind. Hopefully you're still here. Hello, my friend. Yes, my friend. Welcome. How can I use, there's no D there. How can I use the word bear? I read a text where it said he bears. Oh, okay, I see. Usually when we see bear, we think of the animal, and I was like, what do you mean? It's an animal. But yeah, he bears his fangs. All right, whatever. Bear has many different usages. Go to the dictionary, right? This meaning is, it means to show. It's a weird use of bear that is a little older. It's still used usually more in writing, especially like novels and stuff. In everyday speech, it's not quite used as much. We tend to use like show, but yeah. Always go to the dictionary if in doubt. The dictionary is literally a place to look up words. I'm not saying you didn't do that, but I'm just saying like that's what it's for. It's not good for pronunciation necessarily, but it is good for looking up words. Thank you. You're welcome. Is it common to say new, reduce? Okay, so new and new. This is a neutral dialect difference thing. There are like most people from say the North Midland or maybe even the middle part of the country, they'll tend to say nia with that Y sound. Then you have speakers like me that don't have the y. We just say new. Both of them are fine. It doesn't matter which one you use. If you like one or the other, go ahead. The simple thing that I teach you is just do the N because why add a y? Okay. Changing reduce to reduce. I might have heard some Americans say that, but that sounds much more like a British thing to me. And again, why add the Y when you don't have to? So I would ignore it. Can you give us an example? I don't know if that's referring to bear or if that's something else. Sorry, I lost that. When you hear people pronounce the L in salmon, yeah, salmon, does it strike you as strange or blatantly wrong? Yes, it absolutely does. It stands out like a sore thumb. People speak how they speak. Apparently, in the San Francisco area, this is a dialectical shift that has happened, and there are probably some speakers from other parts of the country that do this as well. Maybe it's something that's going to be changing over time, but to me, at least, saying salmon or almond or almond, something like that, it grates my ears. It's like very distracting. But there are other pronunciations. What about solder? Like solder? Isn't solder? Hold on. Yeah, that's solder, isn't it? Ha! Okay. Yeah, see, I've never had to actually read or write that word very much. And so I was like, how do we say that? Is that the word I'm thinking of? Turns out it is the word I'm thinking of, but I wouldn't think to spell it that way. That's what lack of exposure does to you, kids. Get your language exposure. But anyway, this is obviously a word that I don't need. So it doesn't really matter that much. And that just drives the point of what I was saying earlier. If you don't need the word, it doesn't really matter. You should be able to recognize that your passive vocabulary is very good, but you don't even necessarily need to know how to spell things that if you're never going to use them. Yeah, so when I read that, I want to say solder, which I think some people say. And then but I'm like, well, solder should be what it is. We're joining the metal together, right? So I think, in my opinion, both of those pronunciations are fine. Solder, solder. Solder is probably better, but I think they're both okay. That's a random little, I don't want to say stupid, but a random little example that's odd. Just another example of why English is insane. Ain't. Give it 20 to 30 years, it will become a dictionary word. Well, as I said, I'm pretty sure it's been around for a while. But you're right. Things like that do change over time. I don't think it's going to completely take over, but it may work its way into maybe standard variation, and maybe sound less informal. I don't know. Is it common to say new, dude, you? Yeah, so is that the same question? Oh, yeah. So sorry, David Rock. Apparently, I took so long to get to you that you restated the question with more examples, or you just wanted to add more examples. Sorry. My answer is absolutely the same. Some of these sound very British to me, especially student. I don't think any American would say student, but it does sound very good for British English. Why add the Y when you don't have to? New, do, reduce, introduce, produce, student, stew. Don't add a Y. There's no need for it. Please tell us how to use this word. Bear. Okay, I did get to that. See, as I told you, I'm trying to go through the thing. You got to be patient with me. If you put out a super chat, which I expect the super chat is working. I was told that it would pop up here on the StreamYard dashboard. So if you've given me a super chat and I haven't noticed, please let me know in the comments. But I'm trying to get to everybody. And if you want a faster answer, the only way to make it stand out is the super chat. I'm not trying to get you to say, hey, give me some money. That's just how it works. Otherwise, I'm going to kind of go in order and try to be fair to everybody. As adjective or noun. So bear is adjective or noun. Well, it could be used as an adjective. Well, it could be used as a noun and a verb. As an adjective, I don't know. Bearish, maybe. Dictionary. Go to dictionary. If you've already gone to the dictionary, then yeah, Claudia was definitely waiting for an answer there. Okay, for tulip, are you more likely to say tulip, or tulip. Oof. Okay. Yeah, so tulip definitely sounds British. Tulip also sounds British to me. There might be some Americans who do that. Tulip would be the pronunciation, if you ask me. Maybe there's variation, but I would not recommend anything else. Again, tulip sounds perfectly fine, even if other natives use tew or chew. Why make your life more difficult? Just say two. Okay. Oh, that's my comment. Sorry. This or that. We're going back in time. What's the difference between switch out and switch? Not an easy question. I see Lily is here. Welcome, Lily. I'm slowly catching up. I'm only 20 minutes behind now. What's the difference between switch out and switch? So, not necessarily an easy answer, right? Because the verb itself might have multiple definitions, and then when we make a phrasal verb, that in itself might have multiple definitions. But in the most basic sense, switch would be like to change. So like if I have the phone in one hand and I have, I don't know, this book in my other hand. Okay, if I switch my hands, switch what objects are in what hand. Okay, so I changed it. Basic meaning of switch, right? When I switch out, which you can also say swap out, which actually might be a little more common. That sounds more like replace. So you're not just like changing the position or changing something. You're actually like, instead of holding this in my hand, I'm going to switch, which you can also just use switch for this. It also works, but I'm going to switch out for the book. So switch out the phone for the book. And there's a reason why I'm using for there as well, because for is commonly used as a basis and used in exchange. I'll give you $5 for that sandwich. What an expensive sandwich. So check out the logic of prepositions. That's a broader answer. Check out the logic of prepositions. That's a basic answer for that. So Lily is here. Welcome, Lily. David Rock, can you switch these items for me? Can you switch out these items for me? There's a subtle difference in the feeling. Depending on the context, they might be interchangeable. It's English, it's stupid. That's a nice phrase. You can use it pretty much anywhere. That's true. Yeah. It's English, it's stupid. Looks like I'm almost caught up. Did I skip something? Oh, a lot of those comments were mine. That's why it looks so long. Okay. You don't pronounce the W in sword. Absolutely. Swarm. Listening to Josh. Wait, what? So are you saying you heard sword as swarm? Or you're wondering why we pronounce the W in swarm and not the W in sword? But yeah, no, we don't pronounce the W in sword. Now, apparently, on occasion, I don't know if it's something that's changing in Gen Z or something, but I had an ex-girlfriend in high school who would actually say sword, and like all of us were like, "Why are you saying the W?" Like everybody in our circle, all of our friends, just we would always, I mean, we wouldn't like make fun of her for it, but it's just like it always struck us and stood out a lot. Like, oh, there she goes saying sword again. And I've heard occasionally on like a random YouTube video here or there, somebody will pronounce the W. So apparently some natives do it, but it's not supposed to be there. It's not the standard thing to do. And of course, most natives or most non-natives do pronounce the W, and it stands out and it gives you an accent, and it just doesn't sound good to most speakers. So, but swarm does. Yeah, we don't say swarm. That doesn't work. What's the difference between change, switch, swap, swap, and shift? They all mean the same in Mandarin. Okay. Well, change, shift, I can't even read. Change, switch, swap, and shift. On sort of a basic general level, they're basically synonyms. They're very similar words. One of the things that causes trouble between languages, your language might have one word for something, and that's very efficient. That's all you need, right? Why have multiple ways to say the same thing? Other languages, maybe for historical reasons, maybe we got one from French and Latin, one came from more like the old Middle English, Germanic roots, that like easy and simple, difficult and hard, whatever. But whatever the reason is, some languages, especially a language like English that tends to absorb words from other languages, will end up with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ways to say the same thing. Now, each word does have a core that may or may not matter. The reason, the difficulty is that maybe in most cases you can use any of them, or maybe in most cases you can only use, say, like 3 of them or 2 of them. But then in certain contexts or in certain phrases, or maybe certain idioms, right? One is going to be used and not the others, or maybe 2 is going to be used and not the others. It sucks, I know, but it's yeah, it is what it is. That's just part of the challenge of learning a language. My recommendation, because you now know that they're generally kind of the same thing, they may be more or less interchangeable. Focus on the exact context where you find the word. Right now, your use of it, that's going to have to sort of adapt and change over time, but input is always the biggest, most powerful, important thing. Okay. So anytime you read it, anytime you hear it, one of these words, pay attention to the exact context. Now, you're not going to know, maybe they happen to use change instead of switch. Okay. And you at least know change works in that context because you heard change. It's not necessarily an easy thing to fix, but you can, like, say, go you can try to look up example sentences and see like how common it is to use change in that sentence or in that situation. And I don't have an easy answer for that yet, an easy fix for that, but the more exposure you get, the more you're going to start to see, oh, okay, so this word tends to be used a lot more in this context. Maybe this word is used a lot more in this context. And at the end of the day, if you use the wrong word, people are probably going to understand what you mean anyway. Communication is the most important point. You can learn from mistakes. That's also a great way to figure out the difference. But between these 4, I generally probably wouldn't worry too much about it. Shift actually might stand out a little bit more because change is a very broad word, but change, switch, and swap kind of have this feeling of like changing like between 2 things, where shift feels more like you're moving one thing. So I wouldn't shift. I could shift my phone from this hand to this hand, but I wouldn't, if I had the book, I wouldn't shift the items between hands. Like, I guess you could say that, that's fine, but we'd probably say switch, swap, or maybe change even. So context, details. To your neutral standard pronunciation of bar and oral or aural. Yeah, you can pronounce aural as oral or aural. I think last time I probably said oral would be OR or something. But aural could be both. Either way, whatever. Aural have the same vowel. Okay. So bar and aural, yes. In more, I noticed something like O plus R sound in both standard versions. In both standard versions. What do you mean both standard versions? I'm a little confused on that last point. More. Like between more and moral? Kind of, you have to clarify that. Alan, please say, welcome, Alan. Please say, I don't want a copyright strike. So I'm not going to say that second word. It's not a curse word, but it's a crude word. And I'm not sure why you're asking. So let's drill into what you're asking about. Is it like the th versus the t at the end? Because you're also changing vowels. I don't know if you realize that teeth has an e, the second word has an I. Unless you're trying to say it I think it would be teet, which is a related word that uses e. So question number 2, what does the phrase "is a gas" mean? That is a pretty old phrase. I think it comes from like the 30s, where it means like it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a gas. It was a lot of fun. At least that's my understanding of it. Solder, UK is sol, US is saw. Okay. Solder, solder. They both sound fine to me. But as I said, solder is probably better. So yeah, I'd probably go with that one then. Okay. See, and this is actually an interesting thing between Yuroka and I, with that whole measure thing, as a native speaker, right? And then me, I'm like, you're saying so UK is soul. I don't know if soul sounds okay to you, or maybe it sounds British to you. To me, it sounds like another way to say it. It doesn't sound British. But you can have two natives who, based on obviously we generally get exposure to our native language. We understand it. We can use it, right? We know what generally sounds good and what sounds off, what sounds regional. But there's going to be little details depending on our exact experiences, and our exact interpretations of our experiences that might be slightly different. That's one reason why you might hear one teacher say one thing and another teacher say another thing. Maybe they're both right, but they're looking at it from different perspectives, right? So I caught up with the chat. Yay! I didn't think I would do that today. You guys really slowed down. Like, the heck? We're going so good. Yeah, it's supposed to be well. I don't care. Anyway, I guess I'll remove that. What else? I don't know if I have anything else. It's 1 o'clock, so it's been an hour and a half. I could end here, but I don't know if you guys don't seem to have any other questions. I don't know if there's anything else I could talk about. I will say that so I posted a poll yesterday. If you guys haven't seen that yet, you can go check it out. We have 17 votes so far. I guess I can't share it. Doesn't look like I can share. But if you go to the channel page and go to the community tab on YouTube, it should be the first poll there. So I'm really trying to level things up. And actually, what am I talking about? I can show you the poll. I forget I have that power now. Unlimited power. Share screen. Share screen. Let's go ahead and throw the audio in there. Brave tab. Is that the one I want? Yes. Share. Okay. I also should probably hide this. So we have I guess maybe it doesn't even show you guys that. Does it? I don't know. Let me go over here. What does it show you? Oh, it doesn't. Oh, that's cool. I don't have to worry about that. Anyway, learning as we go. So this poll here, right? I'm asking, what ways do you think I can make my content better, more interesting, more engaging, more valuable to you? I want to do this full time as soon as possible. Like I'm just gonna still keep teaching classes, but I'm teaching classes. I'm doing food delivery to like try to make extra money to pay for stuff that I got to pay for. I have other things, obviously, I have to eat, whatever, blah blah blah. So I know it's not easy. We're still small and stuff, but I'm thinking, well, okay, if I can make better content that gets watched more, that's more valuable, that's more engaging, it's going to grow the channel faster because if it's performing well, the algorithm's going to push it out to more people. So And I'm not just trying to pander to the algorithm like some people might think. Like I'm literally trying I'm trying to play that game to some extent so I can grow faster and do this full time. But I'm also like, if half the people don't even get halfway through the video, then it's kind of like they're missing the value, either because A, I rambled too much, I didn't get to the point, right? That's why I say make videos shorter to the point. B, maybe I'm not providing enough value. Maybe I'm not making it engaging or entertaining enough with, like, you know, B-roll and transitions and all this stuff. And I'm not trying to be some big fancy editor necessarily, but and once we grow to a point where I can afford an editor, I'm going to hire one because they can do a lot better job than I can, and it's going to give me a lot of extra time that I can then make even more content with. But I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that you guys get the value, because it's up to me. What I have to say might be super valuable, but if I don't package it right, if I don't keep you watching long enough to get the full value, that's my failing. And I know not everybody's going to watch it. Obviously, like, you know, almost nobody has like 100% retention. I'm not trying to do that, but I'm trying to improve it, right, as best as I can. So see if we have any comments here. Nope. So I don't know what you guys think, if you want to comment on this or if you want to jump in and cast your vote as well. Apparently all of the above is the biggest option, so I just suck. That is the moral of the story. My content sucks. Thank you guys very much for letting me know that. I didn't expect that to be the largest answer, but this one, I know I'm the contraction video I'm making right now, I'm trying to like cut out anything that is not necessary. So I'm working on that. This one, I don't think anybody explained if that's what they chose. So if you want more value, please explain, because I'm trying to give you the most value I can. Talk about more topics, areas of English. I'm kind of surprised by that. I didn't think anybody would pick that, because most people are here for pronunciation right now. And then more engaging, entertaining. I thought that was going to be a higher percentage, and apparently it's not. So I don't know what to do. Like, what do you guys want from me? What do you want? Tell me. Close that. How do I remove? Okay. And then I could just do this to add it back. Oh, that's so useful. I love StreamYard. It's like magic. So trying to improve, you know, as I put out more videos, more content, even like, you guys might not think it's, you know, a big thing or whatever, but if you notice, hey, I can follow the content easier. Hey, you're doing a good job of getting to the point, or hey, you're giving better examples, or hey, I like the transitions you're adding. Like, you don't have to comment, you don't have to do, but if like that gives me important feedback to say, like, okay, at least this one person found that useful. And then of course I'm going to look at my general analytics and see how well the video is performing and see if that matches, you know, that feedback. But any particular things that you guys point out that you're like, hey, this is an improvement, good job, or I don't really like how you did this, like, let me know. Like, if you say, hey, you need to provide more examples, okay, like if especially if I get a lot of people saying, give us more examples, then I'm going to say, hey, you guys want examples, so I'm going to give you more examples. So anyway, whatever it is. Wendell has a question here. Wait, I already answered that question, Wendell. If you missed it, go back. Is that the same question? Oh, maybe it's not. Okay. Have the same vowel pronunciation in the first syllable. Yeah, for sure. Bar, arl, bar, r, bar, r, 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 r. Yeah, it's just an R colored ah. Sorry for insisting on the same question. Nope, no, it's okay. You're just lucky I don't have a bunch of other things to answer here, because otherwise I might be like, well, I already answered that. Oral. So you could say oral is oral. It's okay. But kind of whichever way it comes out, I would say oral is the standard. Oral, O-R-A-L, that would be or for sure. But I mean, it doesn't matter what variations there are. Like, just pick one. Like, if it sounds good and it generally, you know, you like how it sounds, and it's not going to particularly give you an accent, then it doesn't matter. So you can say bar, arl, and there might be little subtle differences of why it might seem kind of different. Because like when we say arl, we're going r, and then just like when I say ah, it might not quite sound like ah and r, because we immediately start moving into the It's not R, it's R. It has to be blended. The same thing going into the L. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that with the L, but especially if it's RL, like girl, it tends to be a lot easier just to kind of blend them together, at least for natives. I don't know. It's weird, but you can blend them for sure. And what you might hear instead of like Arl, that's one way you could say it. But if you blend them, just like if I say eel, instead of eel, like you can sort of blend them more. But now we're going from that into the ul, where in bar we're not. And so where you hear the end of bar and you hear the end of r and arl, you might think like, well, is that actually the same R? And it is the same R. It's just now it's blending with an L after it, Arl. So yeah, you could even look at that potentially as a triphthong. Ah blended with blended with ul. I guess technically it's not a triphthong because we're not doing it all at the same time. It still is 2 syllables, but in a way it's almost kind of like a triphthong because they're sort of blending and blending. I know something like an O plus and it sounds like more lord, soar, arl, oral, but in your standard neutral accent, arl sounds like an R. As I say, it could be or. I would probably prefer to say it as R. That's how I would think of it. But it doesn't matter. Now with or, lord, soar, I mean, those are or. You can't change those into R. You can't say mar. Mar would be maybe a different word. Lard is a different word. Sar is, if you put an S at the end of it, I guess it's a different word. So that oral doesn't even like fit with the rest of those. Like it can if you say oral. But it doesn't matter. it doesn't matter. Soul definitely sounds British, Australian, Irish, English, etc. to me. It's a word I'm familiar with because of its usage in electronics. Okay, so you have more exposure to that particular industry, context. What is the word? I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. You know what I mean? Where I don't have that exposure because I don't know that much about electronics. I'm not very familiar with them. So you would have higher exposure to hearing Americans say it versus other English speakers say it, and your ear will probably pick up, oh, okay, Americans, we usually say it where British, Australian, etc. say it with ul. So to you it sounds fine, but to me, I've heard both, and because I don't get it generally exposed to that word as much, they both sound okay to me. So yeah, it's a nice little interesting little what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think anymore. A nice little inconsequential tidbit that can be interesting. So okay, anyway, we're dead again. That's fun. But yeah, so aside from that, the last thing that I'll want to mention, unless we get more questions, is my screen's, oh yeah, it's still being shared, but it's not live. Yeah, I'm working on a contractions lesson. The next lesson I was going to do was what you guys probably notice that I've slowed down is because I'm continuing to do more research on like how to make better videos, how to better like position things and grow the business and this and that, whatever. But also because I'm taking longer editing because I'm trying to make better videos. But the next lesson I was going to make was going to be 5 things you were taught wrong about English. And contraction, the one thing that many people are apparently taught wrong. I have students like this. Students tell me this all the time, and I'm always shocked. Teachers tell you that contractions are informal, which they're not. And I also needed to start talking about contractions anyway. So I said, well, instead of making that, contractions was going to be the next lesson. I'm going to make the contractions lesson first. So the lesson that you're going to get, hopefully tonight, if all goes well, you're going to get the contractions lesson. The first contraction lesson is going to be a little mini series. And then the next lesson will probably be 5 things you were taught wrong about English. So that's what's coming up. Now, for those of you who are interested in when the next mouth posture lesson is going to come out, the Phase 2 Group 1 lesson, that is scheduled for the week of the 25th. Early in the week of the 25th on Tuesday. So a couple more weeks. And I will also say, even though I'm going to have to announce it later anyway, at the end of this month, I think it's the 30th. This is 30 or 31 days. Yeah, the 30th, the 1st, and the 2nd. I'm taking a little mini vacation to the mountains, and I will probably be completely offline. I might still answer some comments on my phone or something, but I need to disconnect and get into my favorite environment and just be surrounded by pine trees. It's been way too long since I've been able to relax in the mountains. So this is going to be a couple days, and then we'll be back to our regular schedule. But teeth and beat. Okay, good. Hot and hard. So yeah, so that other word that you gave, again, as I said, it uses completely different vowel sound. That's part of the reason why I was confused, because it's like, well, we're talking about the T or the vowel sound, but apparently we're talking about E and E. So it's between the TH and the T in the first case. So teeth and beat. So the ending there, the eth or the eat, right? The difference, one uses a TH, one uses a T. Now, depending on your native language, you might be like, I don't notice a difference. And that's probably because you can't really hear the difference between the TH and the T. And or also, remember, we have the dental T variation of the voiceless TH sound, which is the Spanish T, which is probably why you don't hear the difference. So in English, teeth, that's fully clearly enunciated. It's a TH sound. In English, beat, okay? That's a T. It's nice and crisp, nice and clear. It's not the, it's not beat, beat, no, it's beat, okay? So that's the basics. Now, you can use the dental T variation of the TH sound, teeth. That would be replacing the TH with more of a Spanish T sound. So I can see why we get some wires crossed. Beat, we're probably not going to push out the T like that because it's a strong T. So we're either going to maybe, but very unlikely, do a weak T. Beat. Still has the same quality. It's not flat, but it's just, it's not T, it's T, beat, beat. Okay. Or much more commonly, it will be stopped, glottal stop, beat, beat, beat. Okay. Or alternatively, depending, you can maybe drop it or blend it or flap it into the next vowel sound. So if I say beat it, it turns to flap D. So the T at the end, we know, has lots of potential variations, but by itself in isolation, it's most likely going to be a stop or maybe just a weak T. So you want to separate that out because I'm pretty sure you speak Spanish. You want to go in, make sure that you're not confused about the normal full T and the normal full TH, and then make sure that you know about the dental T variation of the TH, which is the Spanish T, and how the T at the end can change and not actually be a T sound. Because if you don't hear T at the end, you might be like, well, what's going on? It's supposed to be a T. So yeah, it's an interesting difficulty. Now, hot and hard. So very big difference here. If you can't, especially because I know a lot of Mexican Spanish speakers who grew up in Mexico. I think a lot of you were taught British English based off of what my one of my language exchange partners told me. And I don't understand. I mean, there's nothing wrong with British English, but especially since like America has been the world power for a while, and most of the world seems to want to learn American English anyway. I mean, I guess I'm kind of biased for that because people come to me for American English, but that does seem to be the thing. Plus, American English in many ways, grammatically, pronunciation wise, is not in every way, but in many ways is easier than British English. This is actually one point where British English is a little bit easier, maybe. But if you were taught British English, this is going to be a difficulty for you because it's completely different in American English. The first word is ah. It's just ah. Okay. There's no R to it. It's just an ah sound. So we say hot. Okay. Of course, I'm using the merger there. Make your life easier. Use the merger. Still sound fine. The second word, hard. Okay. So this is the R colored ah. So it's the same vowel, except the first one is just the plain vowel. The second one is the R colored vowel, which makes it seem a little bit different because you have to blend it, right? Like I was just talking about. Of course, there's a T and a D at the end here, and that's going to maybe create a little bit of a difference as well. But if I assume that's not what you're targeting, it's the ah and the R. So that's the difference. Hot, hard, hot, hard. Now, a British person, I don't have a perfect British accent, but they would probably say the first one like hot, and the second one like hard, hot, hard, hot, hard. Probably have my mouth way too open for that, but I guess clearly enunciated, it would still work in British English. And there's this subtle little shift. I don't know the exact sounds that they're making there. I just mimic the sound as best as I know. I don't know how well it matches up with the way I normally speak American English, but there's a little bit of a difference in sound there. I think that the hot is more like, to me, it sounds in British English sounds more like oh, like hot, hot. I don't know if they actually do that or not. That just seems British to me. And then hard would be because they don't pronounce that R in the syllable or in the vowel combinations. It kind of, I guess, is more like a schwa type of thing or something. I heard it explained that way before. I don't know. But it's like instead of saying ah, you're saying like ah, ah, ah. So there's a little bit of a different posture, a little bit of a different tongue position and placement to it. That's not quite the same in American English. But the biggest difference, of course, we actually pronounce the so you want to pronounce the that makes them clearly different between the two, hot and hard. Anyway, looks like we're kind of dead here. So if nobody has any last minute questions, I have plenty of things that I could go do, like work on the video. I don't want to edit anymore, guys. Become a subscriber, become a member, and just like let's grow the channel so I can pay an editor. But I can't complain. This is part of the YouTube game. I just pray for the day when I don't have to edit my own videos anymore. That is the first thing I'm going to outsource. Okay. I guess I'm going to go then. So thank you guys for watching another live stream. Come back next week. The Ask English Hack show is still coming up as well. I had a recording issue for that. It's supposed to be up yesterday, and that didn't happen. So I'm going to try to get that as soon as I can. Maybe I'll just move the episode to next week and whatever. I don't know. I got things going on. I'm trying to make content for you guys. So I'll see you guys next week. No, wait. I don't want to leave. I need to end broadcast.